Hello, my name is Doug Hubble and welcome to Astrophotography Tutorials. Today's subject is Maxium DL calibration of your frames. Now, why is calibration so important? Well, what calibration does is it takes the camera noise out of your image so you can get a better result. Now, the calibration frames typically include flat frames, bias, and darks, and each has its own special purpose. What you're looking at right now on the screen is what we call a flat frame, and this is taken with a light in front of your telescope, and you want to get what's called a ADU of around 23 is what I go for on mine. And if you look right here under the average, right there, you can see right now it's 23,609. So what you have to do to get this kind of value is you just expose light to the CCD, and you have it covered in an opaque with maybe a t-shirt or a flat machine or some kind of flat device that you've made your own. Even some people have used just a plain old white screen on their monitors to get their flats out. And the next thing I wanted to talk about is called a bias. Now, this is an example of a bias frame. A bias frame is the shortest possible exposure your camera will take. And then the last is the dark. Now, the dark is an exposure that matches the exact same exposure time as your image that you shot. So what each of these do, if we look at them, they all have different types of noise. Like this particular one right here is the dark one, and in this dark, if we look in the upper left corner, we see this noise, and this noise doesn't appear in a bias frame because the bias frame is a very short exposure, and it doesn't have time for that amp glow to heat up and show the same results. So each one of these has its own value, and you can see like in the exact upper left corner on a bias, I don't see that. And in the dark, you see how it's kind of glowing out right there. So what you do is you take these frames and you combine them together into your light image. What it will do is it will remove the imperfection. I wanted to show you some noise. Now what you're looking at right now is an image in its raw format, and I'm hoping you can see these little spots and dots right here. And when I use dithering in my image capturing, you'll see that the stars will move around, but the noise will stay exactly in the same spot. So keep your eye like right in this area right there. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to thumb through a few images, and you can see that that noise spot has stayed the same, but the stars have moved. That's because I'm using dithering, and that's the kind of noise that we want to get rid of. So these little spots or dots that are in there, it's common for that to happen, but with calibration frames, you can get rid of that noise, and that's what we're going to do. Here's another little tip I would like to show you. On this particular file here, I called it SS Pro dark underscore 300, and what I did is I made a mistake. This really wasn't a 300-second dark exposure, it was a 600. And what I want to show you is that how you can actually, if you're unsure of a particular dark frame, you can go to View and go to the Fits Header window. And when you go to the Fits Header window, it'll show you right here the exposure time. So if you ever get in a situation like I did and kind of fell asleep at the wheel here, named it 300, when you weren't sure about it, you can always go back into the Fits header and then look at that value so you can make sure you have the correct frame going there. You remember you want to match your dark frame to the same amount of time as your light frame. Go to Set Calibration, and then you add each of the groups, and then you add the files for each one of the groups. So the first example here, I have the bias. I'll go ahead and add that group, and then I want to add the files for the bias. The bias frames, typically I like to get 20, and I like to get 20 of each of those. And you just select one, Control A, open it, and select all. And then what you do is you go again through the dark and you add that group again and do the exact same. After you've added all of your files, it'll look something like this. You'll have each of them, the bias, the darks, and the flats. The darks and the bias, you can actually build those as libraries, meaning you don't have to take these each and every time you go out. But you need to make sure that the darks match whatever exposure time you have. So if you go out and do a 300-second exposure, you can't use a 600-second dark on that. Now, the flat, I recommend doing that each and every time you go out. The simple reason is that each time you go out, you can get dust or some kind of other optical interference in your imaging train. So make sure you do that each and every time you go out. Then click OK. Another thing I should note is that the image that you're looking at, this is in the RAW format. Now I took this photo, it was with a color CCD. It was a Starshoot Pro camera, and when you take an image in the RAW format, it looks monochrome, okay? And when you do the calibration, you want to make sure you do the calibration in the RAW mono format like you see now. When you go to the the flats and the bias, you'll notice that and even the darks, they're not a color frame at all. So you want to calibrate the image with the mono versions, and after it's been calibrated, then you convert it into color, and then you stack it. File, batch, save, and convert. And with the batch, save, and convert, you select the raw files that you started with. And so I'll go into the folder right here and select all of my original files, and then say OK and open them, and they'll be inside here. Now the path or the destination where it goes after it performs the raw calibration or performs the calibration, we want to change it to a different path. Now I typically like to use a folder called processing, and it's up to you how you want to do it, but then put it in a folder, and by default it says if destination already exists, move to subfolder called backup. So depending on what you want to do, you can name it however you want, and then you just simply say OK, and it will go around and it'll start converting all of your files and remove the noise from your images. Here's the raw image before we calibrated it, and here's the same image after we calibrated it. If you bounce back and forth, hopefully you can see the differences between the two. But there is a significant loss in all the camera noise after we calibrate the image. And even though we're zoomed in on a very small portion of the image, when you do calibrate it, you remove any kind of vignetting or any other kinds of noise or dust that might be in your imaging train. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.